There's a lot going on in the real estate market over in the MatSu Valley. And so for that reason, we're going to do a market update today, looking at the single family, the land, multifamily property over in the MatSu Valley to give you a little bit better of an idea for what's happening in this largest market in the entire state of Alaska. Before we do that, though, make sure you give this video a like, subscribe, do all that good stuff, and let's go and jump into it. Now, the first thing I want to look at is what's going on in the single family properties for the MatSu Valley. And the first thing that I want to check out if we're looking at single family is what's going on as far as the inventory goes. So this time last year, there was about 465 properties available on the market, and this year it's about 605. So that is a big swing, and that's one of the biggest jumps we've seen in inventory and recent history. And one question I would have is how many of those properties that we're seeing on the market that's coming up as active are actually real? Because we do have quite a few builders in the MatSu Valley that post properties on the market when they haven't even broken ground yet. And it doesn't cost them anything to do this. And it's actually not a bad business move because you're not out the money for having, the materials and the labor and everything. And you're not, as a business, you're not exposed for those expenses and just waiting and hoping that a buyer decides to buy the product. So it makes sense, but what that does mean is if we're looking at these numbers, the question is, okay, how many of these properties that are active right now are real brick and mortar, four walls, one roof type of properties? Is this real, or is this are we just padding the numbers here and it looks like there's more inventory than there actually is? Because for most people, they probably can't afford to do the new construction route and also wait for the 6 to 9 months, usually minimum, in order for the property to be complete. So for a lot of people, that's just not going to be a great option. Usually around this time of year, just to give you some historical context as far as the inventory, we would expect to see about 800 to about 900 properties on the market. So while about 605 is an improvement, it is definitely not historically putting us to where we were prior to COVID. The next thing we want to look at is what's going on as far as the number of properties that have actually closed in the MatSu Valley. So this time last year, we see that there was about 181 properties that sold. In this year, it's about 170. So we see a bit of a dip there. I suspect we're probably going to see an increase going into next month as we're kind of closing out a lot of the summer deals. Either the month of September is really where we start seeing a lot of those closing out. Usually around this time of year, we would see about 200 to about 210, somewhere in there. So the fact that we're at about 170, we're still a little bit lower, but considering the inventory that we're down, I'll kind of take that as a win. The next thing we're going to do is look at the average sold price for the year to date for the MatSu Valley. So looking at the average sold price, we see that this time last year, the average sold price year to date was about $398,000. And now we're seeing about $416,000, which means that we have in fact seen about a 4.5% increase for the average sold price for the MatSu Valley. So this is a good, healthy amount of appreciation. I'm actually pretty happy to see this as opposed to like 10 or 15% increase for the average sold price like what we saw back in 2021, which was absolutely insane. We don't want that long term because that creates a lot of volatility in the market. Once something goes up very, very quickly and sustains that for a long period of time, there's a good chance that's eventually going to come down. But seeing this nice steady increase of about 3, 4, 5% increase of appreciation year over year, that's healthy. I'll take that. And if you're a home owner, that's great. If you're a home buyer, I know you think you want the market to crash so you can get this great deal. Believe me, you don't, because the amount of time you're going to spend holding this asset with the value going up is going to be so much smaller than this little period of time where you think you want it to come down. So believe me, get on the other side of it. You'll be way happier about the appreciation at that point. The next thing we're going to look at is what's going on in the as far as land goes, because there's a lot more land available in the MatSu Valley than what we're going to find in most other parts of the state, because this is where the majority of new construction happens for the entire state. And what we see is that this time last year, there was about 455 properties available for sale in the MatSu Valley as far as just raw land goes. And now it's about 644. So that does mean we're seeing a slight decrease, not very much though. Historically though, we would see anywhere from about 1,100 to about 1,200 pieces of raw land for sale in the MatSu Valley. So this is a bit of a dip year over year, but it really pales in comparison when we look at the historic average for the number of pieces of raw land that we usually see available. And unfortunately, that's probably just not going to change anytime soon. Now, looking at the number of pieces of raw land that have actually sold, we see that this time last year, there was about 77 pieces of raw land that actually sold. And this year, it's 72. So see a bit of a decrease there. But just looking at the numbers here prior to COVID, we would see probably around like 50 to about 70 was kind of the par for the course. There's not a whole lot of big movement for the raw land that's selling at any one time. The fact that we have consistently seen about 90 to about 70 properties selling just for so many years back to back to back here really does indicate the demand for raw land in the MatSu Valley, because there's continuing to be more and more development out here. And so when you're in a market like that, the raw land, you're going to start seeing more and more of that selling. And we can talk more about why that is, what's kind of spurring the growth in the MatSu Valley, but we can talk about that more at another time. All right, now looking at the average sold price year to date for land in the MatSu Valley. I know this is why people actually do tune in. They want to see this number. We did see a bit of a decrease here because it went from about 83,000 this time last year to about 77,000 this year. So about a 6.5% decrease for the average sold price for land. And you know, that can be any number of things once we start seeing prices just one way or the other. Land doesn't really appreciate at a very quick rate unless there's very specific circumstances that happen to really make that price just balloon up. Keep in mind, when we're looking at the raw land here, it really can include anything from the little quarter postage stamp size lot that somebody purchased all the way up to like a 200-acre plot that somebody bought for multi-million dollars. So there's a lot that can get included in here. And, you know, according to this, yes, we're seeing a bit of a decrease for the average sold price. And really looking at the year before, like 2023, though, it was about 74,000, then about 76,000. We're really staying about that mid 70,000 is really where we're staying for the last 3 or 4 years. So not really expecting that to change anytime soon. Going to be drastically wrong. We get a lot of sudden big development happening in the MatSu Valley, then obviously this can really swing. But right for the moment, we're staying right about that mid $70,000 for the average. And obviously that means absolutely nothing when you're trying to find a specific piece of property, because obviously it all comes down to the specific characteristics and value of that property. But for those of you who look at averages, there you go. All right, let's take a break real quick here. For those of you who've been watching for a bit, you do know that I host a monthly meetup for people who've recently moved up here to Alaska. And if that's something you would like to jump in and be a part of, we're actually starting those meetups back up now that, you know, summertime's over. And people are a little bit easier to corral again to get these together, because summertime happens up here and everyone just scatters to the wind. So for that reason, we kind of took a bit of a break, but we're starting that back up here for the fall. If you'd like to jump in on our monthly meetups, I mean, definitely do feel free to go check those out in the Facebook group down below. That is the only place I'm going to be posting about those. So do make sure you go check that out. And I look forward to meeting you. And let's go and finish up today's market update looking at the multifamily market. All right, now looking at the multifamily market, we see that this time last year, there were about 45 properties available on the market. And now we're seeing there's right around 41. So there's a slight decrease for the number of multifamily properties that are available. This slight decrease, not very much. Really, the big story is that usually around this time of year prior to COVID, we'd see about 60 to about 85 at the high water mark. Whether it's 40 or 45, like who cares? Like it's still way lower than what we would normally see. Now, looking at the number of properties that have actually sold for the month of August for multifamily, we see that this time last year there were 11, and this year there's 7. So it can kind of fluctuate just back and forth depending on what's going on with interest rates. That's kind of my theory anyway, as far as multifamily goes. The demand for multifamily is more closely tied to the interest rates than what you're going to find with other asset classes, because I mean the property lives or dies off of it penciling out, and interest rate is a big part of that. Not the only part, but a big part. And what we are seeing though is that normally around this time of year, we would see anywhere from about 8 to about, 20, 19. That's the one year where it does that. Usually it's around 8 to about 6. So being at about 7, not a big change one way or the other there, but we'll definitely check back here next month and see if that trend does continue. I suspect we're probably going to see it increase in the next couple of months once the interest rates coming down has had time for people to get stuff under contract and for that stuff to start closing and actually show up on this graph. Now, looking at the average sold price for the multifamily properties in the MatSu Valley, we're looking at about $596,000 this time last year to about $596,000 this year. So that does mean that we're seeing kind of a good steady increase for the average sold price for multifamilies. It's tough to say, honestly, with a lot of these multifamily average sold prices to know whether or not, know by how much things are increasing, just because multifamily includes everything from the little duplex all the way up to the big commercial property with about 50 units in it. So it really does encompass quite a bit. I do believe, just anecdotally, we have seen an increase in appreciation for the value of multifamily properties. I don't know by how much. So it's really going to come down to the specific property and how it's actually performing with the numbers and the rents and the condition of the unit, all that good stuff. So if you have questions about this, reach out because it's a little bit more nuanced and a little bit more tailor-made to each property than what you're going to find with other asset classes. So in summary, if I'm a buyer and I'm looking at this market, first thing I want to know is how much of the market is actually available, because if about a third of it is properties that don't even exist yet, but it's just builders throwing out a fake listing to see if someone's going to purchase their product, and then they'll go and break ground, that obviously really does limit my options. There's definitely less available than what we've seen historically. And also, it does not pay to wait if you are a home buyer at this point, thinking that the market is suddenly going to shift to your benefit, because it's been going on like this for about 4 years at this point, and really no sign of it changing anytime in the near future because it's a supply problem, and I don't really see the supply changing anytime soon that would really change the makeup of the market in the availability and the prices on stuff. And like I said, you should kind of be grateful for that, because once you get to the other side of it, you're going to spend way more time on the other side of this process seeing the value of your asset go up and up and up than you're going to spend right now when you're running around and just hoping that you can just get a deal, because the market is suddenly just tanked, which, yeah, okay. Feel like I've kind of beat that horse enough. So moving on, for sellers, the big takeaway for you is it's still kind of a strong seller's market. You do have to make sure, though, that we're actually in line with what the market is indicating the property is worth, because it used to be as long as we were within about 10%, 10% of whatever was the realistic market value, we would still get offers on the property, and probably multiple offers. And that is just not where we're at anymore. So you just have to make sure we are priced accordingly for what the market is indicating the property is worth, and stay on top of our basics like the marketing and everything else to make sure it shows in its best possible light. So this has been your market update from the MatSu Valley. If you have any other questions, do feel free to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to talk a little bit and make sure that you're set up for success here. And thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.